Welcome, and thank you so much for coming this evening. Karen McLeod, our president, was scheduled to welcome you, but she's been called out away to be with family. So here I am. I'm Alma Grand, and I've been a member of the YLLA, the Young Ladies Library Association, since we moved here in 1977. I truly believe in the mission of this organization, which is to bring literacy and culture to our community. It's an organization that was founded by young ladies. That's why we're called the Young Ladies Association. Actually, teenagers started it. They love to read, they love books, and they started a lending library out of a storefront in downtown Plymouth, New Hampshire. This all happened 150 years ago. The history of the organization is long and rich. We are always looking for new members and new ideas. If you are interested, please leave us your contact information and we'll be in touch. We'll invite you to our next meeting. And now I'll turn it over to Laura.
Thank you, Alma. Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming tonight. Our first reader, Josh Nicolaisen, is a modern Renaissance fan. When we first exchanged emails about tonight's event, he was in Colorado officiating the National Snowboard and Free Ski Championships. The second time we touched base, he was at a fellowship at the Martha's Vineyard Institute of Creative Writing. In between, he was no doubt knee and elbow deep in dirt as the owner of Old Man Gardening, LLC, which looks after properties in Holderness, Plymouth, Campton, Thornton, Lincoln, Woodstock, Sandwich, and Wentworth. With all that going on, we can't wait to hear what he reads tonight. Josh received his BA in English from Plymouth State University, and as our program notes, holds an MFA from Randolph College. He taught English for a decade at Waterville Valley Academy, where for 5 years he was the department head. He now coaches the varsity snowboard team at Holderness School, and in the fall will begin teaching writing at PSU. Josh has published in dozens of literary journals, including the 2 COVID spring anthologies conceived and edited by our featured reader tonight, Alex Peary. His poetry has received a Pushcart nomination. He was recently awarded a grant from the Breadloaf Writers Conference. Josh lives in Campton with his wife Sarah and their daughters Grace and Azalea. Welcome, Josh.
Thank you so much. I didn't even realize I was that busy. That might be the best intro I ever get anywhere. Cool. Start a timer so I don't stand up here too long. Awesome. Cool. Thank you all for coming. Welcome. Get right into poems for you. Kind of tried to pick a variety. They asked me for some New Hampshire things. That's what you initially asked for, so sprinkled in some of that. Can you hear me all right? Yeah, cool. I'm trying to remember some things. This morning, the sky was as purple as a giraffe's tongue, and it licked me before hardening into sad fire. What is it about dawn's kiss that urges go? Go do something before it all turns blue. My muse is asleep by late afternoon like the river otters at the zoo. I'm not sure what color their tongues are, but I know a woman who, before she died, told me one of her greatest joys was to let the children feed the otters on their birthdays. The child's, not the otters, of course. For who knows when a rescued weasel was born, how they'd like to celebrate. Imagine that. Imagine being 7 or 8 and handed a cold bucket, the only child handed a bucket of shellfish to send the whiskery slicks into full-bellied does. Imagine waking in mid-afternoon blaze, muscle-drunk, empty black husks surrounding you. Now imagine yourself a gorgeous, necky ungulate licking the face of a salty boy. Imagine yourself a boy. Go on, feel that. The lilac snake swab your cheek, that shell in your hand. If the sky can be a giraffe's tongue, then you can be a boy again. All right. Here's a short one, just a little image, I guess. If you've driven through Crawford Notch at all, has anyone seen, Elephant's Head?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah, it's a big cliff, it looks like an elephant. New Hampshire's pachyderm. Poking through a canopy of conifers, its peripherals gaze to the east and west, past the rocky pass, as tusks and trunk disappear into trees, and the midday sun warms its gray granite forehead. With its strong seismic senses and knowledge of many years since the ice left it here, the protective pachyderm keeps watch over the notch as climbers carefully ascend its face, and families of people and birds perch and picnic upon his patient head. Cool. Thank you. This is it's called the Fall Classic. This came from a hiking trip. Just trying to tick off mountains on random lists, and then you get to mountains that have no names at all, which is wild. That in this day and age, man hasn't named every single thing still. Yeah, so a little narrative poem. A Fall Classic. Beneath a canopy of changing leaves and a crisply brisk autumn breeze, we watch the fire burn fast, flames licking and lapping over logs and sticks we've broken like bats, because nothing can quite bring us back to boyhood, like being in the woods, or maybe baseball. Tonight we seem so small, sitting in the forest on a trailless, nameless mountain, hypnotized by an orange chorus of crackles, sung by this glowing fountain feeding our nostalgic needs like the little box whose handle we take turns turning to hear the World Series while we dry our boots, rest our feet, and cheer our Red Sox. Might be my only sportsy poem. I don't really do that. This is a poem that came from staring at a photograph that freaked me out a little bit. A lot of my stuff, you can probably tell, has to do with boyhood. More so, a lot of it I probably won't read tonight because it's incredibly miserable. A lot of it is like more masculinity and that vein of things. Tried not to give you too much of that, but there's some of it here, so a little violence maybe. Cider season. Grandpa looked down, eating an apple, which was exactly what this fawn was doing behind our field when I drove a slug through its guts. Ooh. He put ripe fruit in his mouth, the juice oozing out into the white bramble of his beard. I stuck his buck knife in the young deer, cut out its asshole, and pulled out the reeking. When buck fever hit me, I got lucky. My second and third shots missed. Instead of destroying meat, they smoked up frosted dirt as the babe's lungs frothed to a stop. Black blood seeped into needled earth. Its innards were dark purpley pink. I fought through the stink. Dad directed my hands. I eviscerated my kill, while two preceding generations of huge men watched me separate organs and trim out white marbles of gristle from a cave I'd now carved deep in a cage where rhythm used to beat. The meaty heart inert, its chambers dropped in a white bucket and steaming under a cold sun, its climb sending morning frost blossoming into invisible vapor. There's always going to be so much we can't see. 4 hungry eyes bored into me. I focused on what was at hand. Violence that made me hear what I ached for. They called me a man. All right, after that, I take something funny.
Yes, please.
Has anyone bought a dead and down firewood permit before? From the National Forest Service? I don't recommend it. Meditations on Permissions. After an afternoon of editing papers and analyzing satire with my students, I pull in and park at the White Mountain National Forest Visitor Center. Headquarters. Sounds official. Sounds capable. But I'm not here for the first time, or the second, or the third. It's the fourth. And all to attempt to purchase a permit. A permit to collect dead and down firewood. The first time I came, the man who could operate the computer wasn't in. They can no longer be issued manually, I'm told by a kind lady who's upset visibly over her inability to help me. Also on my second visit, no permit person. On the third, he can't make change. I break my 50 to collect my 20, so I go. And now, as I approach these headquarters, I hear the heckles of my heroes, Frost's warnings of a winter short of wood, Vonnegut's cynical chuckle over the player piano that can't possibly print my permit. Thoreau's sneers towards a man who holds too much trust in our systems. Twain berating a bureaucracy that should be simple but just won't work. And Abby, the angered eco-terrorist, who is flat out furious over the idea of paying to work for wood that is already all of ours. Wood that's just waiting to decompose. And from his secret illegal grave he barks, "Just fucking cut it!" As I snap back to see the permit man. He's here, and he's taking out his change bag. But today I brought exacts. And as I walk back toward the door, permit in hand and eager to gather this winter's warmth, it's almost as if I can feel Emerson's hand upon my shoulder and feel his forgiveness for my laughably attentive attempt at self-reliance. I think I'm okay on time. I think I can get through these. My family, we live on Susie Driscoll Road in Campton. This is Sarah, by the way. She's great. Does anyone know anything about Susie Driscoll Road? Yes. Can we talk? I would like to talk later because.
We live on Windmill.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Because I've heard just so many random stories, and what I was told at first was definitely not true. I could use all my time just talking about this. I've gotten some interesting history at this point. It started with us being told that Susie Driscoll burned to death in her home, which is not true in the long run from what I understand now. But I did find newspaper articles from a friend of mine who is a real estate agent and was selling the property that said that an indigenous woman that lived there before had frozen to death in the house, which added an incredible amount of irony to the story for me, and now I just want to know a lot more. So if you know anything, that would be super cool. And nobody lived there either for the first. Someone just bought the property, but nobody lived there for the first 13 years that we lived there. So I just walked all over it all the time. When I walk your property, just beneath Bald Mountain in your crooked chimney and chipping mortar, the faded cedar shakes hold strong against summer storms and cold snow. You lived here alone. They're not your shakes, though, the home having been rebuilt long ago on the same stone foundation which once formed your basement. I wonder what you kept down there, what you stored on your shelves, jars of preserves, squash, and root vegetables, stories or photographs no one will ever see. I try to feel the bite of walking back from your outhouse on a frigid January night, a dozen paces guided through fallen flakes by the flickering flame of an oil lamp, still sleepy but stunned into waking by winter's slap, and then the stinging warmth of opening the wood stove door to feed the fire before returning to an empty bed. While you remain faceless, I imagine you plucking the first few apples, ripe and red, from the trees you'd hope to harvest from for years to come. I see you planting the hydrangeas edging your porch, young and leggy paniculata, packed with potential, now unpruned and neglected. Suckers shoot up to the sky, weighing down the unshapely shrubs with an inferno of bright blossoms, while peonies and hostas beg for division, blooming only where they can. Black bear and turkey now call home to the forests that have reclaimed your fields, and I find myself curious over so much. What did you keep for animals? Were any with you when you went? Were any outside, and what became of them? Who was your closest neighbor, and how long was it before they knew? So many strong women who choose to live alone are ostracized. How were you? Did you move out here like we did to get away? I'm glad someone named our road after you so that we can wander and wonder over your story, your road where old barbed wire fences still run parallel through the hearts of oaks and birches you knew only as babies. All right, a couple short ones. At my third of my 5 graduate school residencies, we were in the peak of COVID, and like 70% of us at residency got
Can you
COVID.
speak up just a bit more?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Sorry. Yeah, we all got COVID at my third grad school residency. And it happened on the last day, so it had already been gone for 10 days. And then as I'm driving home, we found out we all had COVID. And then I couldn't go home for 10 more days. Sorry. And sorry. Killed momming and did great. And I lived in our neighbor's sugar shack. Sugar shack quarantine. What could happen inside this box of pine tongued and grooved into a single room where only candles light my page? I hear mice. They don't bother me. What does is thinking about how a marriage can bubble away. I'm alone and staring at another losing hand of solitaire set atop a table with a heart carved in its legs. I eat basmati rice and slices of avocado, black beans, a veggie burger. All of these things prepared and dropped with a knock at the door by a pair of honeyed hands I long to hold. Too often I'm too far away. And even when I'm not, in quarantine, sometimes I'm thick and opaque ice. Sometimes I'm flames inside like the fire below the evaporator, where our twice-divorced neighbor reduces sweet juices of sugar maples to that candied amber hue, 40 to 1. What are the odds that our one quick kiss didn't infect Sarah? What are the chances that I can be more when I get home, or that I could need less, that I could provide some shade, a reprieve from the heat, that I can be tasty, thick syrup on buttered pancakes and not the box in the woods, isolated on 400 acres and tough to find, that I can be roots doing quiet work, modestly reaching, who knows what could happen here. Oh, please, let these walls boil me sweeter. This is just a quick series of haiku. The title is another haiku, I guess. A shooting star from the summit of Mount Hale during vernal equinox. Fire tower torn, wintertide now receding, a river-like bright, celestial ship, dot of constellation gone, spilled scintillation, resplendent golden effulgence, smoldering sky flame, nightlight of the past, snowfield of granite refracting glowback, pool of dark black swallowing. Spring starts tomorrow, and our tired eyes, something long lost, died tonight. All right, last one. Be excited to hear Kate and Alex. Thank you guys. Ode to the Ash. Suppose I had the confidence of an ash, to grow straight-grained, casting my wide shade and possessing the will to pull my branches back and sing proudly with my green voice. Here I stand. Suppose I could be so safe in my bark that I'd be the first to drop my clothes and the last to put them back on. Suppose my cold nakedness happy, soaking in the albedo of snow. Suppose I could morph from one state to another and still keep my name. Suppose I could season myself in just 2 weeks, that I could be useful in death. Suppose for you I could provide real warmth. Will you let me?
Those speakers, Emily.
That's perfect.
When Laura asked me to introduce Kate Donahue, I was pleased and honored. Kate and I go way back. Kate was my granddaughter's English teacher at the Plymouth Regional High School. Plus, for many years, I attended the Women of Words poetry readings at Silver Cultural Arts Center, where Kate and her fellow poets shared their original poetry. I love that. And now my official introduction to Kate. Kate found her poetic voice in 1974, before she didn't truly embrace the name of poet, until she attended a writing conference in Red Oak, Vermont in 1994. And she calls herself the occasional poet. She reads her work at local holiday observances, publishes poems in the local weekly paper, or collects them into a published chapbook, or works on her poetic memoir about adoption search and reunion. And occasionally, she pulls her car over the side of the road when the poetry muse inspires her. Kate was a founder and member of Women of Words, a regional writing group from 1995 to 2018. She currently enjoys writing with WWW, also a regional women's writing group, although the meaning of WWW varies depending on who you ask. I also want to add, in the summer, when we purchased the absolute best corn on the cob in the area at Longview Farm, we often see Kate there because she works there in the summer. And they're going to be opening up soon, she told me. So, Kate, please.
Yes, Longview Farm is opening full-time on Tuesday at 9 o'clock. Good evening, and thank you all for coming tonight. In addition to reading my occasional poems at Plymouth's annual Memorial and Veterans Day ceremonies, I have also written poems for my son's weddings, for a priest's retirement, and giving gifts. So this first poem I'm going to read was inspired by Peggy Pond Church's poem to accompany a loaf of bread. Gift of a hand-knitted blanket. I give you the grasslands far flung for grazing, and the meadows swollen in lush green small streams and hooves clip-clopping along stones. I give you spring and summer warmth, curly fleece rich with scents of lanolin, and the shade's long coolness from the stands of maple trees lining a stone wall where merino sheep lazily nap until herded back at twilight, dogs barking at their hindquarters. I give you the shearing shed in early October and dry wood floors, sunset light through windows in early October, gauzed in fleecy dust as the ewes' bleats thread the metallic whir of clippers pulling off thick woolly coats. I give you memories of women holding spindles in one hand, fixing wool in the clefts, fingers on the other hand drawing strands of carded fleece to whirl, circle, drop, and twist in synchronized rhythms. I give you this cable Afghan pattern, seed stitches and stocking knit stitches, loopy paths of weft and warp, and a tick, tick, ticking rising softly from my fingers. I give you this blanket, gift of sheep and hands, downy as summer's unmown grass, comforting as your mother's embrace. So later in life, I knew I was adopted since I was like maybe 2 years old, but at age 33, I learned that my birth parents' families were both farmers. Shocker. So attending college in upstate New York, accepting a teaching job here in Plymouth, and eventually landing a job at Longview Farm were all rooted in my nature. This poem is called Inheritance. A call of ancestors, These relentless, unyielding ghosts pushed me forward to the farm, its fields and soil, furrows and crops, and I went. I drove the farm pickup we named Bessie Blue through tilled loam, a rich mix composted from 2 large zucchinis, yanked and flung off the vine, then churned with soft dirt, raised into mounds, stretching east to west along the torso of land, newly fertile, waiting for transplants of squash, cucumbers, beets. I serpentined greenhouse aisles, learned the anatomy of grafted tomatoes, suckered, then clipped onto strings. A blush of ripeness glowed on their round red bodies, dusted in a veneer of yellow pollen. I knelt in deep mud after rain and in rain, coursing along spines of pea plants. I rubbed elbows with the shadows of uncles, cousins, grandsires, parents, as I picked handfuls of beans, curved like green question marks. With the noon sun at my neck, my arms turning brown and rounded as the earth, and my hands rooted into each day, harvesting my legacy, I traced the marrow of my family genes and thanked these gardens that welcomed the spirits of my heritage. So part of the challenge of being my 2 sons, growing up with me and wanting to pull over all the time to write a poem, these next 2 poems were actually inspired by the pull the car over and draft this poem right now. The first came from me looking at people's screened porches. Well, that sounds kind of stalking, but I wasn't. Because I wanted to install one at my house. And the second poem is part of a poetry and photography project about a snowmobile bridge at Hallsbrook Road in Romney. A coming of age. Summer haircuts at Aunt Jean's. A green kitchen stool, a towel, barber clippers. We boys huddled in the family room, whistled out of the neighborhood, our hair wetted down with the garden hose. She pointed to me, my first. Under the amber glow of the porch's bug light, Aunt Jean draped the towel across my shoulders. I trembled. A press of her palm bent my head. The first hair fell. I slanted my eyes left, tried to measure the inches sheared in each clipper pass, collecting on my lap. Then I looked toward the house. Faces pressed against the porch windows. Eyes wide, they watched the fleecing of my childhood. The bridge of Tuesday afternoons. Set back in the hazel woods of deep autumn, the bridge rests across the stream. The worn spaces and splintered planks account for the magic of afternoon updrafts and white sun. From another place they return, 2 beings move into one soul. The incline of the stream's water burbles through the furrows where magic things stay whole. The passage draws them together. On the bridge, they sit across the stream. There is room to dance again. So yeah, a lot of my stuff is New Hampshire. A former student of mine and his father used to plow the segment of Route 175 between Campton and Thornton. And the student claimed that it was quite a boring job. So of course, I had to take up the challenge and prove differently. A year between Campton and Thornton, New Hampshire. Route 175 curves northward through summer. White birches curl sunstreaks onto faded asphalt, arch their green, undulating boughs over dips of pavement, tonguing early morning's heavy dew. Along the road's narrow thighs, blackness spins between the 2 towns. She nuzzles leaf eddies, surrenders to yellow, orange, reds. Could she but turn, pass beyond the stand of maples and into thick-scented pine, the road would have her bed there and make love to the stone wall among the ashes of an autumn forest burning. The Gore Road gathers snow's caresses from 12 miles of winter plowed into her heaved breast. Frost in soil and dirt thrusts pavement up, opens byroads, wets evening streetlights where soft white banks lie quietly along her hips. In April, the road rises naked. Snowmelt suckers the furrows of her skin and green breaths pant from the culvert. A womb for spring's grass and flowers to grow in the hollow of the Gore. I'm going to close with 2 poems about Plymouth because it really is a place near and dear to my heart. The first poem is a series of haikus of where I have lived since I was born in 1960, and my fated destiny at the end here is Plymouth because Plymouth zip code is my birth, month, day, and year rearranged. Every single number. So this is called All Roads Lead to Plymouth. Hollister Street Farm, soy and corn, and ancestors crammed into 3 bedrooms. Edgewood Drive, Michigan, neighbors' white fences between birth and adoptive kin. Route 4, Wisconsin, landlord layover farm with sandbox and chickens. Brand new Riverside, I beg to keep Wild Rabbit. Newsflash, JFK dead. Park Lane, 6 months, and nanny teaches me to knit. Bappa wonders why. Monkeys on Fairfax, summers with Sergio. After school, lost my way home. Litchfield cul-de-sacs, kickball, flashlight tag, fireflies caught in Hellman's jars. Surrey Lane, 6 homes. Margaret skates through pond ice. I'm 10, 7th home. Ray Street stopover after high school, start college. Bedroom is guest room. Plymouth, New Hampshire, 03264, scrambled, birth date destiny. It's kind of interesting, so just as a side note, I found the job to teach at Plymouth High School in the Boston Sunday Globe want ads when I was looking a job for someone else. And it was this tiny little ad. And later, I'm walking Highland Street with my dog, you all used to see me doing that, and I saw Chris Lenentine's license plate that said, and 03264H, because he used to live in Plymouth. And then I started looking at the numbers. I'm like, that's my birthday, 4/23/60. Yeah, it was crazy. So I guess somehow my eyes saw the zip code and said, this is where you need to be. The second poem, many of you have heard. I just think it's a great closer because it's a tribute to this town that welcomed me with open arms. Before 1980, Friday night trading. After Anderson's has brewed up fresh pots of coffee, set out bread loaves and grab bag cookies, baker's dozen, $2 each. After the lawyer in the Fox Block office next to Clay's newsstand has thumbed through the Plymouth Citizen to see what's showing at the movie theater. After the agent at Noise Insurance has filed the claim about the chimney fire. And after Rand's Hardware has shelled the shipment of bolts, nails, and screws from Ohio, taken inventory on light bulbs, paint cans, vacuum cleaner bags, all sizes. After the awnings are rolled out over the sidewalk that passes Adams Supermarket, where clerks wearing green aprons stand in the glow of their checkout lights, ready to carry the bags to your cars. After Salivas has mailed you a postcard, according to our records, it's been 6 months since we've seen Charlie and Sean, free sizing and 10% off a new pair of shoes. After the minutes for absent selectmen have been dropped off and picked up at Volpe's, because that's sometimes quicker than the local mail. And after roasted peanuts still in the shell are served in wooden bowls starting at 4 p.m. in the cellar pub. After townspeople have poked around seasonal wares at J.J. Newberry's, after their prescriptions are filled by Dave or Farley's Rexall Pharmacy next door. After the delivery men have reloaded Samahas by shooting cases of Miller High Life and PBR down the slides pinned off the backs of box trucks, forcing pedestrians to step over the ramps that cross the sidewalks and disappear through wooden windows under plate glass displays of pipes and tobacco pouches. After Richardson's strings your racket for free because you bought a pair of tennis shoes this week only. And after the armored car has passed dollar and coin to the Pemigewasset National Bank for customers endorsing paychecks, after the factory clocks click on closing time. After the whistle blows at 5 p.m., a circling dance of cars begins, promenades down Highland Street, squares up by the post office or courthouse jail, unravels out of Rochester Shoe Tree, services the family station wagon at Denny's Exxon, threads Route 3 north from the Stitch and Bitch in Ashland, lays down another washer and dryer payment at Plymouth Furniture. After looping around and around Plymouth Common, one eye admiring the Boy Scout fountain, the other eye, like an eagle's, poised on the coveted space near Blake's Jewelry or an accepted spot by the light and the toy store. And after the family waltzing from the bank to the state liquor store, along the street to groceries and paying the electric bill, finds a dress for mom at the Style Center to wear at the next dinner fundraiser. After the peppercorn and next door barber-style haircuts for $2.50 at Pete's, after New Hampshire Colonials closes on a home within walking distance to the hospital and schools, after the mail is collected, the locks turn in the doors, after the street lights burn into evening's lengthening dusk, this town slips quietly into the soft drumbeat of night.
Thank you, Kate. And thank you, Josh. That was wonderful. Before I introduce our featured reader tonight, I just want to give a shout out to Liz All. She had planned to read, and then she was called away and isn't able to be here tonight, but she's been very supportive in sharing all of our messages and public relations, and so we're grateful to Liz. Alexandria Peary became New Hampshire's Poet Laureate just before COVID-19 shut down normal life. Undaunted and ever mindful of the needs of writers, she published 2 COVID anthologies of New Hampshire poets, established and directed 2 youth writers' festivals, fundraised for and oversaw a writing scholarship, sponsored and judged 6 writing contests, and established Under the Madness magazine, which offers publishing roles to New Hampshire teens. We're just getting started. Alex is unlike anyone I have ever met, in that her drive, intelligence, and talent combine to produce prolific excellence. The author of 6 books and editor of 3 books, her work has received the Slope Editions Book Prize, the Joseph Langland Award, Pushcart and Best of the Net nominations, Notable Essay in 2014 and 2021 Best American Essays, and the 2013 Iowa Poetry Prize. She is a 2024-2025 recipient of a Fulbright in Germany. Alex holds a BA in English from Colby College and 2 MFAs, one from Iowa, the Iowa Writers Workshop at the University of Iowa, and one from the University of Massachusetts, and a PhD in Comp Red, Composition Studies and Rhetoric, from UNH. At Salem State University, she specializes in mindful writing, which was the subject of her TEDx talk, How Mindfulness Can Transform the Way You Write. For over 20 years, she has balanced creative and academic specialization and practice for a single reason, to support writers. We want to thank her for being here tonight, her first reading in Plymouth, and also for all of the good that she did as poet laureate. Younger writers were particularly important to Alex in her role as laureate. She delivered poetry workshops at the Boys and Girls Club and to refugee and immigrant middle schoolers, corresponded with students from across the country in the 2021 Dear Poet program at the Academy of American Poets, and served as a judge for Poetry Out Loud. She also engaged adults with interviews of literary figures including U.S. Poet Laureate Joy Harjo, New Hampshire's own Jodi Picoult, and George Saunders at events for New Hampshire Humanities and the National Council of Teachers of English. She is a frequent presenter on New Hampshire Public Radio. In April 2023, she was commissioned to write the poem commemorating the New Hampshire Symphony's Centennial Gala. Her recitation is pictured on our poster for tonight, which is at the back of the room. Alex lives in Londonderry with her husband, Mike Miller, and their daughters, Sophia and Simone. She is the most generous person I have ever known. Welcome, Alex.
Spilling everything. Laura got one thing wrong. I'm not the most generous person. She is the most generous person. I'm just going to tell you that right now. I dropped something and I spilled everything over here too. No, thank you, Laura, for organizing this event and inviting me. Laura, can you guys hear me? I have a loud voice, but if you need me to, do you need me to speak in the microphone? Yes. I have a loud voice. So Laura is a fabulous friend, a great writer, and a great teacher, and I'm so lucky to have her as a friend, and I'm so thankful that you are here tonight and we're all doing this together. I want to say also thank you to the young ladies of the library, which I think, as someone who is, middle-aged and going up above that, I love that name in itself.
Yes.
Right? And also to the two poets, Josh. My family, I grew up in Maine, and my parents had a convenience store, and we had a deer tagging station, which is where people bring deer. So that poem about the deer, I totally got it. And I have to say, Kate, I hope this doesn't offend, but that was the sexiest poem about a road I have ever That was so sexy. I mean, what road was that again? Maybe I have to come back. So being poet laureate was a wonderful, wonderful honor. I was so touched by so many things I saw in the state, and for a state that frankly, low population state, we're not, some places in the country, the amount of poetry things happening every day is phenomenal, and it's just a great place to be engaged in poetry. So let me get the timer going so I don't overspeak. So I thought I'd give you guys a little tour of some of my work. So I'm going to start from the first book, and I'll base it on the time, and I'll pick some poems from the different books. And I'm hoping to end on an excerpt from the Pforzheim Quartet. I'm going to Pforzheim, Germany, which is where my mother was born and from, to do a Fulbright, and so I'm working on 2 books about this place in Germany. I'm hoping I can read that at the close. And so I'll go from very long ago in the past to very recent work. Okay, so the first poem I'm going to read is from my first book, which was called Fall Foliage, called Bathers and Dancers. And I'll read one poem from this book, and this is the poem called The Word. So what I got to tell you about my poetics is that I'm very meta, which just means that language makes an appearance in my poems, so language is a detail in itself. And what you got to know about this poem, first off, I don't write like this anymore. It took me 9 months getting up at 4 in the morning to work on this poem. 9 months. That is not tenable, right? You all know this is right. I mean, I was like Martha Graham. I had my knee on, like Martha Graham, a dancer. I would get on the floor in the morning and try to figure out this thing metaphorically, right? So what you got to know about the word is this. So it's about a woman, and she's walking in an urban landscape. She's walking a dog, but the dog is half a word. So half of the body of the dog is a word. And as it moves through the landscape, it interacts with other words it comes across. And there are a couple of puns in here and a few little side jokes too. So, okay, ready? All right, so the word. A woman is walking a word that's half a poodle. Near this cursive gate where you're standing and reading, a woman is walking a word that's half a poodle. That's an ism. That's an act, state, process, doctrine, theory, or cult past my name, past the tobacco shop, past the fruit shop with bananas like hands on an American flag and serrated watermelon. She passes the happy face and many other pedestrians, past the little church with the black and white tiled rhyme, then the carefully mown slogans that are golf courses. Just do it. Milk, it does a body good. The open air market where oranges and pears are stacked as semicolons, and past the sentence in block letters that endlessly circulates as the air conditioning for buildings B through D. A woman is walking a word that's half a poodle. A felt green gentleman at a penciled-in cafe table chair observes that the same woman passes with the same dog every 5 seconds, or it's 3 blue and white W's in a row made of gel and foam, then 3 lowercase b's. She's out buying a bayonet of bread. Above, in the yellow sky, a phrase drifts. At the 3rd word of this poem, right in front of my house, the stanza, the dog writes a single letter S, an anise fruit, a pasty cookie on the sidewalk. Please curb your dogs. I am just a scribble. Between the woman and a dog, there's a gap of 3 typed spaces in which she controls him with a leash of spelling. Miss Madeline knows there's a snake of consciousness hibernating under the ground. A cemetery for shapes, blobs, blots, objects without names. And so the gap widens, and it's here that the dog flees. Landscape in the distant corner of the gap, and a dragon. Okay, so 9 months. 9 months. Not gonna happen again. That's why I wrote the book on mindful writing and writer's block. Not gonna happen again. So I think I'll move on. Let me look for a sec. I'm hoping you could bear with me if I read something. So my daughter is 19 tomorrow, but 19 years ago she was born very prematurely at Brigham and Women's. They didn't think she was going to make it. She made it. She's turning 19 tomorrow, and she's healthy and well. So I'd like to read a poem about that experience, if that's all right with you guys. And so this is from Lid to the Shadow. And so my second book is very Jungian. It's very much about the unconscious and how the unconscious grabs a hold of our life in unexpected ways. And this poem is called The Gift. And this poem is called The Gift. And it is on page 46. Okay, so the gift here means 2 things. It means like some sort of gift you might buy at a shop to give to a person in the hospital, but it also means the ability to see things, including the future and the past. All right, ready? And it starts off with a large list, and then I would say that after that, the list starts getting the energy of the poem going, and then you end up, has anybody been in Brigham and Women's, unfortunately, in the room? No, there are a few little quiet nods here. But in Boston, you know, the big hospital. It ends up in Brigham and Women's, and it ends up seeing something at Brigham and Women's, okay? So that's it. The gift. Like a spittle of aluminum, a crest of fear in a long-faced mirror. Like water rushing over a box. Like a dried sentence flying in the air, like being shown a picture of a perforated wave, like a mark that appears on each moment, like knowing a man is in the box, ingot of man, and the water is shiny, highly intuitive. Like a moat dripping with silver, a cataract painted with lead, a sentence of gleam, and the sky speeded up, cloudy, obscure, occluded, unheard of, using a cat's eye for a planet. Like the water, now almost reaching the help desk across the marbled floor of the enormous lobby of the hospital. The sculpture, a prototype donated by the major auto pharmaceutical industries, Spanish moss fills the ceiling in the carport, vaults rush past picking up no one, and souls like aphids stream the stalks of the escalator. In this gift, a sheen, a shining, wrapped around a grid of major research hospitals in one block, on an acre with a drop-away floor. The mesh bow, car-sized, is heavier than it looks. Shreds of people, the day torn off, and the incinerator is working. O dollop of man, replica of Rodin's Thinker from the gift shop, I spot that. Neon yellow teddy bear inside stalks of cellophane for the sick child, I spot that. A man is inside the box of cascading water. He is always wrapped in the present moment. By now, the silvery water runs over the lines of this poem. I feel like shaking for the jet, the cross inside the box. We are all headed home. Okay, I think I'm gonna, all right, so the next poem I'm gonna read you, I'm giving you a tour of my books here. So the next book is called Controlled Birth Alta-Lee, and this is the one that got the Iowa Poetry Prize, and it's very environmental, and it's about, well, it's got a bird series in here, and etc. Lots and lots of birds. And I'm really thrilled with the cover. Getting your cover for books is sometimes hard. And it was this artist I admired so much. Charlie Harper, it's been a while. I really admired Charlie Harper, the artist, right? And so I wrote to his son and I said, you know, I've got a book coming out. It's just a poetry book, so don't charge a lot of money for the image. I'm kind of curious, would you let me have one of your father's images? And he read the manuscript and goes, I have the perfect image. And the image on this book is called Visit My Web Page. And I don't know if you can see it from here, but it's a big spider web with tons of birds and insects in it. I was like, oh my God, I was so happy. The best book cover I've ever had. There's one more, but this one's really fun. So I'll read a poem from this one called Like That. And I have the enormous pleasure, this is the poem that they showed the kids for the Dear Poet program in the United States. And all these kids from across the country wrote their interpretation of this poem. And I got all these letters. And I was like, wow. So that was a pretty cool experience. I would say Like That is about being in a family where there's a ton of stuff that's not said and withheld from you, like information. And I grew up in Maine, and we, as kids, we just spent a lot of time in the woods, and we would cross-country ski, my brother, sister, and I. And of course, you guys know the chickadee is one of the big birds of Maine, right? So, okay, so here goes. Like that. An enormous snow-covered branch is threatening the living room. An enormous tanned branch with snow like heaps of table linens, or the clumped white language of animals juts into the living room. A pile of dead oak leaves stands in the doorway. If I walk into the room, snow will ruin the somber furniture. Across the dining room table and under the glass chandelier, across the empty space for the Sunday roast and the doily, my sister, brother, and I are cross-country skiing when a giant embroidered chickadee crosses the room, putting a word in my ear. Okay, so, and continuing the tour here. So the next book is called The Water Draft. And I would say this book's a lot about, this came out in 2019, right, before the pandemic started. It's a lot of art. I'm very interested in the visual arts. And I think with this one, just think for a sec here, I believe, I'm actually going to skip this one. I'm not in the mood to read from this one, so I'm going to skip this one, okay? So, and then I'm going to, because also, you know, it's hard listening to a lot of poetry, I know that. So I'm going to read two more poems, okay? So two more poems. And the next one comes from the book Battle of Silicon Valley at Daybreak. I published this in, I think, 2022. And this is actually a funny one with the cover, too. So I've got a poem in here called Battle of Silicon Valley at Daybreak that was published in an online magazine. And I thought to myself, I wonder if that one ever got published, because sometimes you don't get notified. And I Googled Battle of Silicon Valley, and I thought, I'll just see what happens at Daybreak. And next thing, up pops this crazy image. So this book, okay, I begged to have it, and she let me have it for the book. Battle of Silicon Valley at Daybreak is looking at the social media, which I abhor. As soon as I stop being poet laureate, I'm not doing any more social media. I hate social media. Really, really do. I feel like every time I send a tweet out, it's like I'm sitting in my own ego gas, if you know what I'm talking about. It just feels like ego, and I don't like it very much. And so social media, all the harm it's done, all the stuff that's going on behind the scenes with social media. And so I know you can't see the cover here, but what's really crazy about this is just totally about like what this book's about. There are all these CEOs of social media, you know, like all the biggies, right? And they're all on horses, and et cetera, et cetera. And in the background, a big city is being destroyed, a big contemporary city. So I was like, this is crazy. It's exactly what I'm writing about. And I think in this one, I'm going to read you a poem. I hate meetings. Anybody have to go to a lot of meetings for their jobs? Okay, sorry. Laura probably doesn't know this, but some meetings at English departments suck. So English departments can be pretty bad. So probably some of you guys, other meetings. So I like to do things. I don't like to talk about things. I want to just do. Oh, wait, are we being recorded? I'm realizing. I love English department meetings. Every single one of them. Very meaningful, impactful, wonderful stuff. Okay, so I'm going to read you a fun poem. I want to read you a fun poem just to lighten it up here a bit. It's called The Hills of Bureaucracy. Okay, so, and what you got to know about this one, I had it written down. Let me look. Where'd you go, Hills? Page 59. What you got to know about this one is it's long and skinny. On the page, it goes on forever. It's long and skinny, so it moves real fast. And I swear to God, I started this poem before the pandemic. You're going to see why in a second. So why I'm saying this. So I'm also a poet who likes to borrow language from places you wouldn't expect inside a poem. So I'll put other kinds of genres inside. The actual last piece in this book is a short story about the pandemic called The Decameron. I did a riff of Boccaccio's Decameron. So there's a short story in here, along with poems. And this one, I'm sure it's going to sound familiar to some of us in the room. It's got a lot of the language of contracts and stuff you have to sign mixed up with the language of meetings. Okay? I had a lot of fun writing this. I hope you like it. Hills of Bureaucracy. In the event that the engagement shall be prevented by reason of war, act of God, strike, civic tumult, epidemic, or any cause beyond the control of either agreeing party, which is deemed to be force majeure, the agreed parties shall be respectively relieved of their obligations contained herein and return to the rolling hills of bureaucracy. A deep green field of barley, more hills with hay bales, no sky, an argyle of crops, following emergency exits and evacuation plans to the long and winding road that leads to your door. That would be 15A on the update form. The red door with a mat and rack for your shoes of a cottage in the village. Let the minutes state you had a tiresome journey through various causes on the lengthy lavender road past blaze orange fields that shall include revolutions, riots, wars, acts of enemies, national, state, local emergency strikes, floods, fires, epidemics, quarantine embargoes, or unusually severe weather, and that we're not responsible or liable for any loss or damage for delays in performance or failure to perform. The 10-point font path has brought you to the open forum on comprehensive internalization, where the committee invites input from the whole community about where we are at and where we should go, which thatch houses for which gas stations in the settlements of educational plans, mission statements, internal hiring. The designated spokesperson from the Institutional Advancement Office is explaining, this is a plan for all of us, a family reunion hosted by Human Resources in partnership, kid you not, with Business Intelligence, focused on core academic function. So the member at the back of the conference room knitting woolly yarn clouds as stress relief should get a grip. We all stopped our planting in favor of administering. To attend this conference on the administration of planting, CC all, the assistant to vice associate, interim acting chief, head of associate director, staples for vineyards. Collated construction plans are in departmental mailboxes. Approving the minutes from yesterday, let's send the next presenter back, like a salmon stunned with frustration, who weeps with frustration into the whirling vortex of a policy about policy, a few hay bales, shade trees for cattle, or the subcommittee to this committee, though party one is not a fish, but a person who must drive back in his rental Kia. The application form was incomplete. Next order of business, those ornamental wild grasses planted last year for the parade, tall on the highway divide on Route 2 South, junction of JFK Boulevard and South Main, a death trap or a death wish? So what I'd like to do is I'd like to close with my most recent work. If you're curious, you can just Google, although I noticed today there are magazines down, the website's having problems, but the Pforzheim Quartet, it's a long poem I published. I'm only gonna read you the last section, the last part of this long poem. So Pforzheim, my mother is from Pforzheim, and on February 23rd, 1945, in 20 minutes time, 80% of the city was destroyed and 30,000 people were completely destroyed by firebombing by the Royal Air Force, which ironically is my husband's father. Okay, so worked on those planes. So my mother grew up there. Her apartment building was one of the last to remain standing in this era. She grew up in the rubble. Horrible things were happening all around her, etc. So my Fulbright is going to be, I'm over there already interviewing actually on Zoom people who either saw the bombing or like my mother grew up as rebel children who grew in the rubble, or are the next generation like me, or children of immigrants. So my mother never went back to Germany. She left when she was 17, and I brought her back last summer for the first time she saw her brothers since 1963, last summer. So the Pforzheim Quartet talks about the bombing and what it does to the city, and also the city is highly complicit in some of the worst atrocities. It was one of the earliest supporters of deportation of Jews. It Kristallnacht, it decimated the Jewish population in town. It euthanized people who were ill or handicapped, including one of my relatives, just people who were sick or ill. It did all kinds of interesting things. It was really not the innocent little place. It considered itself to be very minor, etc., small. Why would anybody know about it? In fact, no one ever talks about Pforzheim. The per capita destruction of the city is worse than Dresden. It's a smaller town, and it was worse than Dresden. So this poem has all kinds of I've done archival research over there, an interview already. It has archival research. It talks about buildings. It talks about various people involved. I think if it's okay with you, I'd actually like to read. So can I read two parts of it, if you don't mind? All right. So this is very near and dear to me, the project-wise. Okay. Yeah, at one point in the poem, I actually have a whole section where I quote from the Royal Air Force, their notes. They take extensive notes when they bomb a place, right? So, and it looks like the airplanes and destruction of the city. You can see it actually has the appearance on the page. All right, so I'd like to read you. There's a section in the poem that's called Eugene Detz, a German soldier imprisoned until 1949 in a Siberian prisoner of war camp. So some Germans came back 4 or 5 years after they'd be imprisoned in war camps. And this is actually based on his testimony. There is a little bit of German, but it'll be translated very quickly after that. And then I'm going to end with the last part of this poem for the quartet. Okay, so this is his experience. First part's German, I'm sorry, I was going to do it, but ich wusste nicht, dass unsere Stadt zerstört worden war. I did not know our city had been destroyed. Ruth hatte sich entschlossen, mir die Gefangenschaft nichts über die Bebombung der Stadt zu schreiben. Ruth had decided not to write about the bombing of the city while I was in the prison camp. She did not want to upset me. Also about my brother's death. Ich wusste nicht, dass unsere Stadt zerstört worden war. I did not know our city had been destroyed. The man who gave me a ride to Pforzheim described the destruction of our city, a shock for me. He said, "Pforzheim looks terrible." This was 1949, 4 years after the end of the war. The rubble had been removed from the streets, but numerous houses had still not been rebuilt. As we approached the outskirts of the city, he said, "I will drive you farther." I said, "I would prefer to walk through the city on foot." So he dropped me off in the center of Pforzheim at Leopoldplatz, where I climbed out of the car and marched in the direction of Rosenheim. As I moved through the city, I saw left and right whole houses were destroyed, now only rubble. This was 1949, 4 years after the end of the war. Everywhere I looked, I saw buildings without windows. Emotionally, I was destroyed. I moved slowly. Tears were running down my face. I was at wit's end. I had experienced destruction before, but not this. There wasn't a single human soul on the street. Here, hardly a bomb had hit. I approached the town hall where the police station stood. I saw a police officer. He noticed me at the same time. "What are you doing here? You should not be on the street so late at night." I said, "Excuse me, but I am coming straight from Russia." The police officer was surprised and changed his tone. Immediately, he apologized. "Come inside and drink a cup of coffee." I followed him, and he asked if a member of the guard could bring me home, but I declined. No, I would rather go home by foot. Ruth did not know that I would return that night. I believe it was around 2 in the morning when I knocked on the door. So that's a soldier's testimony with some language repeated. Now I'm going to read you the very last section. So this is the last section of the Pforzheim Quartet. So the bombing happened on February 23rd, 1945, and I think what you probably also need to know is that, so the whole place is destroyed. Just imagine just ashes and buildings destroyed with little white crosses everywhere, with, people that they had presumed were there, or little signs that said, so-and-so did make it, or they're not here, they're in another town. And what you got to also know is, if you've been to any place that's been destroyed in Germany, they have these things called rubble mountains. So Pforzheim has this mountain at the outside. It's all the buildings that were eventually put, Dresden, Munich, they all have them at Trümmerberg, rubble mountains, and they're just pushed mountains. So you look over and you see a mountain, but it's actually all the crushed houses and probably other things, just put there. And now they have trees growing over them. So there's a list of rubble mountains, and the end of the poem talks about domicile, the destruction of people's residences as a form of war, which, as we all know, is very much happening these days, right? Okay, so here's the last section. And I thank you very much for listening to all three of us and for your attention for poetry, and it's been fabulous, and thank you again, Laura and ladies of the library. It's wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. The rubble on the desk. Every February 23rd, rubble of das bricks in short piles, as though a dump truck dropped off a long sentence, left the gaps between gaps, MIA buildings, collapsed people. You, who I'll never know, already organizing the mess. A vacuum is run for decades between cellar craters, window cleaner, and lemon-scented wood polish in the breeze. In the votive light, perennial rebar in twisted S, wooden crosses return in a wasteland monochrome with a message, chalk on stone, Alle leben, everyone here survived. Though I have been listening to the bones of voices in the city memorial, a broom sweeps, a spire topples, the Gold City Express hauls a broken sentence to build a mountain range. Mount Schonerbo, Teufelsberg, Heckersberg, Olympiaberg, those are mountains that rise in fields of charcoal poppies. Those are mountains in fields of charcoal sunflowers. Headlines jumbled with captions, overturned temples, mosques, times, new Roman churches, words or urns. Love is wrapped in sheets and rugs, twists of playground equipment, upside down hospital, crushed shops, living room with a red sofa, torched baby's room. In a yellow flare of a house dress, a woman smokes in the window of the ruins of the world. Bakhmut and Aleppo, Hanoi and Coventry, Hiroshima and Warsaw, Dresden and Gaza, rubble of family, rubble of light, rubble of compassion. We who have ruined our home in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Alex has a we have some time for a couple of questions if you'd like.
Can I put my stuff down?
Yes, please do. And I also wanted to mention that Alex's books can be found in the library, so you can read more of her work there. And then finally, please stick around after questions and consume our New Hampshire cake, cheese and crackers.
You guys want to join me? Josh and Kate,
For questions?
any questions?
That'd be
Yeah.
nice. Yes, come on, and I'll take a picture of the three of you.
That sounds good.
Do you have questions to the three of us? What would you guys like to know? I want to know how you got that sexy comb. You got so sexy. The snow plowing, the snow plowing.
Get a little closer.
How did you? Okay, so that should get a good smell, right? How did your snow plow comb get so sexy?
Oh, is my face turning red?
So we're still being recorded, aren't we? Oh man.
I'm never gonna drive that stretch 175 and not think about her hips.
I don't know, it just,
Shades of Grey.
no, I think Shades of Grey came out way after that poem was written. I don't know, I drove the road and it's.
The winters are long.
The winters are long. And I guess, I don't know, it twists and it goes around and up and down and there's a lot of stone walls and I don't know if I should have read that one. I mean, we're being recorded. But yeah, so take a trip on 175 in Canton and Thornton. Yeah, it's a nice little track. I love playing with language. I guess that's part of it too. Yeah.
I have a question for Josh. So you've had a ton of great publications recently. Are you working on a chapbook? Are you putting together your first collection?
Hopefully.
Yeah, that's good.
We'll see. Hopefully. Yeah. Last week I had a fellowship with them when we spoke. I was at Martha's Vineyard Institute of Creative Writing, and I was working on breaking up a lot of what I'm working on to kind of two different projects. So
Oh, okay.
I printed out everything I thought belonged in each of them, and each wall of two of the four walls of my room became the projects. I'm moving things around. And I'll be at Bread Loaf next week, and I'm hoping to,
Next week.
yeah, hoping to move some of that along.
Is it the environmental conference at Red Love?
Yeah.
I like your t-shirt, by the way.
Thank
Thank you all very much.
Yeah.
It was really good.